And welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Bums podcast. It's your host, Rob, aka B-Ball Archives, and I got the bums in the house. AJ, Adam, thank you for joining me. Let's talk some finals.
Yeah, man, it's good to be on, and I want to first and foremost apologize to my great buddy AJ for not making myself more available throughout this finals. But it is good to be back and good to be talking some B-ball with you. And in summary of that, 2024 NBA Finals. Love that we're here together.
Yeah, cool.
Overall, shame on you, Adam.
Yeah, shame on me. Shame on me.
You brought shame to this house, and
you were just as bad as Luka Doncic, like just almost as bad.
Ooh. Are you saying Adam allowed that many blow-bys?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, I will say we didn't really have a lot to talk about because there wasn't a lot to talk about. It was a gentleman's sweep. There was just one team that was a lot better than the other team, bottom line. So we'll definitely get into that.
And for our listeners that have been following along, I want them to look back at a previous podcast where two of my fellow bums predicted the Mavs in 6. And I don't know if they pushed me to my prediction and wanting to be more bold, but I did predict the Celtics in 5, so I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back there, boys.
Yeah,
but
you should pat yourself on the back.
It was also pre-Porzingis. We didn't know he was going to be back or not. So, asterisk.
I think we assumed it.
In all honesty, did they really need Porzingis? Did his contribution in limited minutes and limited capacity really make the difference? I mean, sure. I mean, he stepped in game 1 and had that really nice scoring in the first half, and it was really nice to see him, kind of be what we thought he was going to be. But outside of that, Porzingis wasn't really the key factor there.
I mean, if we had talked earlier in the series, obviously, like how he came out game 1 coming off the bench was huge, and he let his mark be felt early. But there's certainly some more compelling storylines, and I guess I kind of want to get into one of them off the get-go. Jaylen Brown wins MVP. I think that I assume y'all both agree with that. Tatum was super inefficient pretty much the whole series. So want to get y'all's take on that, and wanted to, before I do, it was very interesting. At halftime of game 5, betting odds favorite to get finals MVP was actually Jason Tatum, which shocks me. So wanted to get y'all's take on that because that was obviously a big talking point.
Well, I mean, he's leading his team in points, rebounds, and assists. The fact that he didn't win finals MVP, that's the first time in NBA history that's ever happened. So when you look at it, sure, just strictly from a statistical standpoint, that itself was enough to put Jason Tatum in that category of he's probably going to win finals MVP. But I think when you break down efficiency and when Jaylen Brown was scoring, it's when it mattered the most. They would get him the ball, he would get the ball into the lane and finish, while Jason Tatum, maybe the very next play, would take an ill-advised sidestep 3, and you were really, really getting a glimpse of, all right, whenever they need to score, the ball is actually in Jaylen Brown's hands.
Yeah, what did you think, AJ? Do you think that the right man won it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a toss-up. If you saw the voting thing come out today, it was literally split down the middle. I think Jaylen Brown maybe had 2 more votes or maybe 1 more vote. I can't remember. But it was, Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. That's what you're going to see. But I do agree with Rob. I think at the time, he just had so many timely plays, and he was more efficient. I think Jason Tatum really needed to lean on Brown for the first couple games until he got his rhythm. And also, he was the one going at Luka. So, yeah, I think he should have won MVP. If it would have gone to Jason Tatum, you can make an argument either way. But at the end of the day, I think it was just a coin flip. So, I'm good with it.
I'm happy that the eye test prevailed, and I'm happy that defensive contribution prevailed, because oftentimes, just statistical output carries so much of the perception of award winning. And I think Tatum did average 20 what was it? I didn't look up, like 25, 8 and 7, something crazy like that.
It was 22, 8 and 7 versus Jaylen Brown's 21, 5 and 5. So when you really break it down statistically, there wasn't a huge difference, but efficiency, yes, huge difference.
I think Tatum ended up the series shooting like 39% from the field. You could almost even tell specifically early in the series, the Mavericks were trying to get Tatum switched onto Luka. Like that was almost a matchup that they identified that they wanted to take advantage of. So yeah, I'm happy to see Jaylen Brown win it, and even more so, I thought it was cool in the, they're all standing around, they're announcing the Finals MVP, and Jaylen Brown talks about how it's a team award and how Tatum's right up there with him, and it's like a team MVP award. I love it because obviously, like the narrative, right, is for those two players specifically for the last 6-7 years that they've played together. It's like who's better? Oh, Tatum's the 1A, but then Jaylen Brown gets the contract, and going back to Jason Kidd trying to get them, early after game one, talking about, we really think Jaylen's the best player. They like tried to pit him against each other, and I think they've just matured. I think they've matured, honestly, and it's exciting to see that.
Yeah.
Wait, I want to hold up, Rob. So you do think? I think we can all agree Jaylen Brown played better this series. Who's the better basketball player?
Well, I mean, I think you brought up the key element, and that's when you talk about defense. The fact that Jaylen Brown can go out there night in, night out, get you 21, 5 and 5, while simultaneously guarding one of the hardest on-ball guys to guard in basketball right now. That says a lot, and it leads to you winning a championship. I think that is... I mean, you're going to really, really have to convince me that Jason Tatum is a better leader when I just see him taking so many bad shots, and it's almost like he was trying to allow the Mavericks to get back into some of these games. And that's the way I felt about Game 3. And even certain moments last night, it almost felt like the team was succeeding in spite of what he was doing.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that.
But just to follow that up, he's been distributing the ball really well because he notices that his shot's not falling. So he's using his gravity and he's creating opportunities for other people for sure. But damn, dude, the shot is obviously not falling, and it's really clearly noticeable.
And if you actually look at his playoff 3-point percentage going back for the last 3 playoffs, it's under 30% easily. I think it's closer to 25%. Credit to Bill Simmons for bringing that up. And it goes to his shot selection. And honestly, I've never liked his release. I think it's a really slow release, and there's so much going on with it that I just think it's harder to be consistent with it. So, but obviously this series was so much more than just one individual player. And I think that this speaks to why the Celtics were the best team all year. They had the best top 6 players, the best 6-man rotation. You could argue that they had 6 of the best 8 players in the series. And with Kyrie really only playing well 1.5 games, it seemed like maybe 2 games. I didn't watch much of Game 4, such a blowout. That, they just... Luka didn't have enough help on the offensive end, and I think it's a credit to the Celtics. They deserve it. They played well all year. They were the number 1 seed in the NBA all year, and it prevailed in the NBA Finals.
What I think did it for the Celtics, and when they won the games, it was at the end of every quarter, it seems like the Mavs just checked out in the last 90 seconds, 2 minutes to 90 seconds of the entire each quarter. They just checked out trying to get to the end of it. And Boston went on a 5-0 run, 7-0 run, 9-0 run to like end the quarter, and then you carry that momentum to the next quarter or into halftime. And we saw it in Game 5 clearly. End of the first quarter, they go on a run. Pritchard hits a big half-court shot going into halftime, and that was the end of it. Right. And you'll look back, what was it, game 2 at the end of the first quarter when Luka quit on the play. 5-0 run to go into the second quarter. And that just hypes up the crowd. That brings the energy. And that's essentially, for me, when you see those types of plays happen and they're not going your way, you're not going to win the game. And Boston just wanted it more. And they were able to just collapse. And, dude, they held the Mavs to 99 points per game, which is wild in 2024. Like, that's unheard of in 2024.
Yeah, yeah, especially when you're talking about, Luka and the kind of offense that he can create. He was limited by what Boston was doing defensively, and that was really noticeable. I think you saw it when, whenever he was trying to close out games and he was being defended in the fourth quarter a little bit tougher than a lot of other times throughout the season. I think that's why you see him shoot 39% from, true shooting in fourth quarters in the finals and only 28% from beyond the arc. It's just, man, that's you got to be more efficient than that if you're going to win.
Well, I think within reason, he lost confidence in his teammates. And whenever you lose confidence in your teammates, you are as good of a player as Luka, you're going to start taking shots that maybe you shouldn't. And I don't want this to be, I think we're going to go in and talk about Luka a little bit more later and, some of the national media talking points that have surrounded him, Brian Windhorst, etc. But, in summary, the Mavericks did not lose this series because of Luka Doncic. He's the main reason that they were there. He was the only reason that they really stood a chance, specifically in those first couple games. Even in game 3, when they lost and he fouled out, I think he was like a +9 or a +13 during that game. And they were losing by 4 whenever he went out, or they were losing by 3 with 4 minutes left. I mean, he's the only reason. None of their role players stepped up. And you saw Jason Kidd playing guys that he hadn't played all series, whether it be Hardaway, Exum. He was just looking for any type of contribution. And I think this is what I envisioned happening and why I predicted the Celtics to win in 5. Because not only did the Celtics have the ability to switch, like I said, but they had the ability to not double team. And it made life so much more difficult for those role players, and they did not step up. They had used all their juice. I think I saw like a meme that was like, just showed a few of those role players just happy to be there. And that's almost how it felt, like they had already won their championship just by making it to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, that's literally every time, Hardaway Jr. or, gosh dang it, Derek Jones Jr. took a shot. That's the way I felt. I was like, it looks like you're totally checked out, just taking a practice jumper, not really even taking it seriously. And they shot poorly because of it. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It was the role players not stepping up. The Celtics had 5 players score 12 points or more, and Dallas had 3 players that only scored 10 points or more. So I think when you look at the fact that the Boston just had really, really spread out point distribution, and Dallas just really couldn't exist outside of their superstars, and it was really apparent.
Yep.
And I mean, you could see the difference was the guys who've been there and the guys who haven't been there. And the guys that haven't been there, like you said, were just happy to be there. The guys who have been there wanted it again, or they wanted even more. And that's why you bring in guys like Drew Holiday to help out with that championship point guard. And it showed. Like, he was ready for the stage. He knew what to expect. And obviously with them losing in the finals a couple years ago, they want it even more now. So I think it was definitely probably the easiest series to call. We just wanted it to be more. So
right.
That's what it came down to. And also, like, just the sheer fact that, I mean, no one outside of Luka and Kyrie showed up. I mean, just nobody.
But even Kyrie, I think Kyrie doesn't get off the hook either, because I think his numbers look better than what I really feel like he put up. Because, I mean, you look at his finals numbers, 19, 5, and 3, that doesn't look horrible. But a lot of that was because of that 35-point outburst in Game 3. But he had 3 games of 16 or under. You can't be the number 2 guy on a finals team and consistently be scoring under 20 points and be inefficient, especially when your role players are just pulling Houdini acts and disappearing.
And especially when you're a guy like Kyrie Irving, who's so polarizing and loved by so many fans and considered one of the best offensive players. I mean, there's a national media talking point that is this the best offensive backcourt that we've seen? And whenever, I'm sorry, but Steph and Clay still exist. I mean, not current 0 for 10 Clay, but that's a backcourt that's won multiple championships. Kyrie and Luka haven't done that. So hearing that, yeah, Luka, I mean, Kyrie, for how skilled he is, he was clearly impacted early and often by Drew Holiday, by Derek White, by Porzingis being around the basket and presenting just a better, it's crazy. The Timberwolves have Rudy Gobert, but he was clearly more impacted and felt the presence of Kristaps Porzingis around the basket more than he did anybody on Minnesota. And you could tell it, especially in those first 2 games. He was struggling. He got a couple of his mid-range jump shots blocked, and he needed to do more. I mean, that duo in combination with all those role players is what got them there, and he didn't step up for Luka, and that's all she wrote. And going down 0-2 like that.
Celtics were also targeting Kyrie, and I mean, the first 2 games, they were getting all the switches. So Kyrie was trying to hold down Porzingis, and so you just can't do that. They're throwing all these guys and just going at him. So he was having to play a lot more defense than he's probably used to.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. I was actually going to say that. That's a really, really good point. He was having to use a lot. What did you just say? You didn't. Yeah, he was having to put a lot more energy on the defensive end, which had to have impacted how he felt.
Yeah, but I mean, I also want all the Mavs fans to stop saying Luka's better than Dirk. Like, let's pump the brakes just a little bit. Like, I get it. He's the new hotness. He's white hot right now. I understand. But pump the brakes. Let him just develop. That's a lot of pressure, and I blame Mark Cuban for even bringing it up. Offensively, I see your argument, but let's hold on. We're talking about a Hall of Famer in Dirk, and Luka still has a lot to go, especially if the narrative is you're lazy. Sorry, I had to say that. Cut it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just a really unfair comparison at this stage. But I will say this, that this kind of reminded me of that '06 Mavericks run where they go out, they play a team that is obviously more complete, obviously more skilled, and then they just get dominated. And but it would be interesting to see, hey, in the next few years, is Luka going to have a Dirk moment where he emerges as a leader and a few years down the road kind of enacts revenge? I don't know. Maybe something like that. But let's see how it unfolds. You're right.
I had the thought process before the Mavs went on this playoff run that if they continued to go out early in the playoffs, or like last year tanked and not even make the playoffs, how long would he actually want to stay in Dallas? And I think that this at least bought the city of Dallas a couple more years of him staying there. I just viewed him as a guy of not feeling like the city would put enough around him, but they really did make some moves to stay more competitive. And I don't think they're going to be a favorite to come back to the finals next year, but they'll probably be on the short list of 4 teams that could at least do it, alongside Denver, Oklahoma City, and probably Minnesota, I would think, right?
San Antonio,
yeah, Spurs, Wemby.
Well, I don't see them. I don't see them with the way the team's constructed right now. I don't see them getting out of the West for a very long time, just because there's a lot of people. The Lakers are going to buy a player or two. Phoenix is going to have somebody for sure for Devin Booker. They're going to eventually figure that out, I would assume. But the West is so stacked, and this was kind of their opportunity. And if they're going to have to make some big moves, but it's going to be hard to do with the new CBA around the corner. That's going to kind of just destroy teams with luxury tax. So we'll see kind of what happens here in the future. But the way the team is now, I think we can all look back, and I'm sure you guys have been on Spurs Twitter recently. And the reason why we're here and the Mavs were in the finals was because Wemby beat the Nuggets. So that literally changed everything in the playoffs, move seeds around, and then all of a sudden you have Denver going out early, the Mavs getting what's left of the T-Wolves, and that's what happened this year. So you can all blame the Spurs for the reason why the Mavs are in the finals.
Well, now that we're talking about teams that we think could get back to the finals, do y'all think that the right team represented the Western Conference, and do you think another team would have put up a bigger fight against the Celtics?
I think that whenever you just look at the matchups and you would think that a team that had a little bit more depth would have been able to do more. So I mean, would OKC do more or would Minnesota do more? I think if you're looking at it on paper, maybe, but at the same time, both of those teams are wildly inexperienced and have never been at that stage before. So to just say that they would have performed better, I actually don't think so. So I think maybe the Mavericks weren't the best team, but I honestly don't think any team was poised to really beat Boston this year. I think maybe Denver could have done the most, to be brutally honest.
Well, that's what I wanted really to talk about is, do we think Denver was still the best team in the West? Looking back at it, how did Minnesota beat them? I don't think the Mavericks beat Denver. And I know NBA and sometimes sports in general is a game of matchups. But I think Denver probably would have given Boston the toughest shot out of anyone. I really do. I think that they would have Nikola Jokic, and it would have been the one guy that would present them something that Dallas didn't really. They don't really have anybody like that to control the pace from inside out. Yeah, to control the pace of the game from the inside out. Luka does a great job of playing at his own pace, but to play through, to have more ball movement, and I think that they have more than just two guys that can score. So I think Denver would have put up a better fight, but I think this was the Celtics year, and I don't want to talk about other teams. I want to tip my cap to them, and a person that I really want to tip my cap to, and this was talked about post game, is Brad Stevens and what he's done since, agreeing with the organization to step into a front office role. I mean, let's look back at some of the big moves he's made. He trades for Derek White, absolutely fleeces a team in the Spurs that just are willing to move on to Derek White because we wanted to get Wemby. If you look at the actual value of that trade, it's not a fair trade. We got a late first-round pick that turned into Blake Wesley, and we got Josh Richardson and another bum. I don't know why I can't say his name right now. Trash basketball player that's no longer in the league. And they acquired Derek White for that. They go ahead and they move on from Marcus Smart to bring in Porzingis. And then they're like, hey, but we're not even done. Let's go get Drew Holiday too. So to make those three moves just within the last couple of years, like what a team. And I don't know how they're going to be able to pay everyone. Derek White only has 1 year left in his contract. That dude could get 30 to 35 million from another team in the NBA. He might be getting it from them. How are they going to pay him and then also pay Jason Tatum within the next 2 years?
Yeah, first and foremost, you're going to have to pay Tatum. You can't expect to bring in Derek White is the role player of role players, but he's still a role player. Jason Tatum is more of a franchise cornerstone option. You have to allocate money to your $300 million contracts first, in my opinion. But he's
going to get $315 million. I
right?
Think it's the most money that he's available to get.
Yeah, you got to assume that that's a 300 plus chunk taken out, and if you're already paying Porzingis $36 million, you already got Drew Holiday on your contract as well. You already got Jaylen Brown making $60 million a year. It's like, where's
earning every penny of it too?
Absolutely. I'm not talking about that contract. I'm not talking about that contract like it's bad anymore. But at the same time, yeah, where is that money going to go? And I think that they're going to have a tough time running it back because they're not going to just get these really amazing role players to step in for veteran minimum. I mean, Al Horford's only going to be there for so much longer. Guys like that.
I was looking at their salary cap situation, and past those top 6 players, there's not a guy in their roster that gets paid more than like $3 million a year. So maybe that's how they're able to get away with it. But I'd really have to dive deeper and pull it up to see luxury tax wise with the second apron, if it's even physically possible for them to give White 30 to 35 million a year and then give Tatum the supermax extension that he's going to be getting. But they have to. They got to do whatever they can to do it, right? They got to run it back and try and win in this immediate window that they have.
Well, yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. If they see immediate value in it, which obviously winning a championship is immediate value, I think that you can go ahead and send your team into the luxury tax, knowing that you're betting on something that's already proven, and
Right.
and I think that that's the only reason you would do it. So I think that even if it means they lose a little bit of money, winning a championship is the ultimate revenue.
So let me see here. So Al Horford got paid $10 million this year. He's going to be getting $9.5 next year. Derek White's under contract for $19.5 through the end of next year. Brown will be getting $50 next year. Tatum $35. Porzingis $30. Drew Holiday $30. But past that, Peyton Pritchard is getting the 7th biggest contract in their team at $4 million. Cornette's an unrestricted free agent. Eesh, they could lose Luke Cornette,
Oh my goodness!
who's getting
Cornette.
$2.4 million. I mean, no one on their team. They've got Sam Hauser under contract for another year at $2 million. So I think that's going to be their strategy, right? They're going to pay 6 guys, and that's about it. I mean, Pritchard's going to be getting, I think, $7 or $8 million next year. Actually,
They're just going to bring in a bunch of. They're just going to bring in a bunch of guys like like Tillman. Like they just brought him in. They're like, hey, if we need some forward minutes, we're going to get you some minutes in there. But really, you're just going to supplement what our main nucleus is doing, and that worked.
Yeah, agreed.
Do you guys think Joe Mazzulla ever's going to smile? Like, I feel like he just.
I saw him smile.
I mean, kinda. Like,
oh no, I saw him smile and then like hug somebody immediately. I saw pure joy in his face.
He's kind of a weird dude, honestly.
he is a character.
Oh
So
yeah.
I'm a big follower of the Bill Simmons podcast. That's probably one that I listen to more than anyone. So
Why are you plugging other podcasts?
sometimes, if you hear my opinion, they sometimes swayed a little bit from old Bill, and he's a big Boston fan, actually, obviously. So a nickname, I'm not sure if y'all have heard this, that more so Bill Simmons' dad gave Joe Mazzulla was second row Joe. And if you saw his tweet after game 5, he said, first row Joe, he's graduated from being second row Joe. And I wanted to see if y'all thought if it was noticeable, if you think it was just the talent, or do you think Mazzulla really did do a good job in this NBA Finals and this whole playoff run, year, etc.?
I mean, I think he did do a good job. Did I think he inherited a really good situation that a lot of people, like you mentioned, Brad Stevens, I'm going to give Udoka a shout out as well. There was a lot of people that came before him that helped create the situation that is, that he walked into. And so I'm not going to act like it's all him, but you still need to manage good basketball players. You still need to inspire and get them to perform and believe in you. And that's hard when you're a head coach of an NBA team in your mid-30s. That's really difficult to gain that kind of respect amongst your players. And the fact that he did that and is an NBA champion, I think his career is poised for maybe greatness. I don't know.
He already has as many championships in Celtic green as Doc Rivers. Hey.
Yeah.
Well, I think another thing about Joe Mazzulla, he gets promoted to head coach, right, after coming off of the second row. He wasn't even on the front row of the bench. And Boston, his first year, Boston had lost a lot of their assistant coaches. And one thing that they did, they brought in Sam Cassell, who won a championship as a Boston Celtics player. They brought in Charles Lee. Those two guys were very clearly involved in helping Joe Mazzulla during games. They were very involved with the players, Charles Lee got out to half court a lot and was helping out with stuff as well. So I think that his ability to surround himself and realize he couldn't do it alone was important. And yeah, I'm happy for him. I'm happy for the entire city of Boston. I've been like I was saying, and I think in the comments on one of our posts on TikTok, that I've been a Boston Celtics supporter. Shout out to our good buddy Trey Hampton. Going back to 2004, watching them play with Ricky Davis and Ryan Gomes and Kendrick Perkins in his media room, and going and after to his place in NBA League Pass,
Was Antoine Walker on that squad too?
Yeah, right before. Yes,
Right
he
before.
was.
Yeah.
They had a bunch of really, really average to bad players, and I got to view them, and always a Spurs fan, but Celtics have been my second favorite team for a long time. So happy for them, happy for Tatum.
I don't know if you guys saw this, but the trade from to Brooklyn that the Celtics made to send KG and Paul Pierce turned out to be Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Of
Yeah, what a
course.
fleecing. What a fleece.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a prime example of just buying people that are past their prime, and then those picks end up being gold mines. And I think that's why people see stories like that and trades go down like that, and they're very hesitant to throw out their picks. And that's why I see trades out there that are like, oh, we're gonna have 3 first-round picks, and it's like, you got to be thinking chess, not checkers, with that, and that's a prime example of that.
Like, you got to be careful when you trade for a guy like DeJounte Murray and give up unprotected picks in 25, 27, and then a pick swap in 26. You got to be real careful, Atlanta, doing that whenever y'all absolutely blow it up this offseason and trade away your 2 best players and give us Cooper Flagg in 2025.
Well, I will say this.
Whoa.
If you guys want to talk about some picks real quick, here are some important dates to come up. So the day after the finals, we can start negotiating with our own players as free agents, and then the draft is on the 26th. The 27th is the second round, obviously, and then the 30th is when free agency opens and we can start negotiating with anybody. So some key dates coming up, and then on top of that, whoa, my desk moved, my bad. Then on top of that, we got the Olympics coming up too. So a lot of fun times in Spurs off season right now. I think it's going to be the biggest off season that we're probably going to have for a very long time.
Yeah, I do maybe want to spend – I know we're probably going to hop back on and have another podcast about, the NBA draft. We'll obviously be talking, throughout the offseason about free agent moves, any trades, and, we're going to do our best to keep our fans, the ones that are out there and loyal, a reason to tune in and listen to us. Is there anything else we do want to talk about the finals? Anything that stuck out? I think one thing that we haven't spoken about yet was – Luka Doncic, his constant complaining, his fouling out in Game 3. Brian Windhorst's comments. I want to get y'all's take on that. And do you think it impacts his legacy thus far in his career at all?
Well, I mean, I think if we're talking legacy, I think it's too early to say, does this impact his legacy? Because I've seen LeBron and other superstars do just as much complaining, but it doesn't. This is bad leadership. Whenever you are looking at the refs and complaining and you're putting your hands up and you're saying, hey, why didn't I get that call? And it's literally preventing you from going back and playing good defense. That is bad leadership. And when you are potentially in a fouled situation and you're looking at the bench and saying, hey, challenge that call right now. It's
expletively challenge that call.
Right, exactly. That's not what a good leader does. And so I'm not for that action at all. So whenever I'm kind of viewing Doncic in this finals, I got to look at his play and I got to look at how he's supporting his other teammates, and he was not being a good leader in those moments. No.
Yeah, and I think saying the words impact his legacy is a little strong. I do think you could say it impacts how he's viewed as a player, as a teammate. I think so much was brought of his defense and his effort, like AJ talked about earlier. that I do think you have to come into question. You know, we're in a group chat together, and AJ had made some pretty strong comments that I want him to follow up on. I think that he had attributed a large percentage of the Mavericks losing to Luka and his lack of defense and his lack of hustle. And I think it was a 70% fault rate was actually attributed to him. Maybe it was a little emotion at the time, but I want to hear my boy AJ's talks on this.
It was after game 2. Let's put the preface on there. It was after game 2. They just got beat again at home. They're down 2-0 going back to
after game
Dallas.
3. I think it was after game 3, wasn't it?
Was it after game 3? I thought it was game 2.
I think it was their first loss at home in game 3. Yeah.
Oh, well, all right, fine. A little much. My bad.
Yeah, you're bad.
67% Luka's fault. No, but I do think you got to think about he sets the tone. Like, the only reason the role players played so well leading up to the finals was because Luka was setting the tone. And when Luka sets the tone and he's able to show, look at me, like I'm balling out, all my shots are going in, I'm getting you involved, you're getting him involved, we're clicking. And he just didn't do that because he couldn't get into a rhythm. Because what blows my mind is when he fouled out, we made a comment after the game to the effects of, we can't play physical or something to that effect. However, during that game in the first quarter, he was complaining about ticky-tack calls. So it's like you can't have it both ways. And so when you're complaining about barely getting brushed on the arm, and then you're like, oh, we can't play physical, like you can't have it both ways, dude. Like, you got to pick one. And he got so emotional with the refs, and he wasn't taking full responsibility himself. So you start to deflect and go, no, it's them, it's not me. And I don't know if they took too much ayahuasca before with Kyrie before the finals and it got into their heads. But, like, I wanted Kyrie to be more zen-like and bring him to the side. But, you know, at the end of the day, he's a grown man. Is he going to listen? I think he doesn't have to listen to anybody, to be honest with you. But I do believe that he is going to learn from this because on the biggest stage, he showed his ass. So, you know, that's I think he's going to grow from that.
You think he was hurt at all? People talk about,
Sure.
He wasn't fully healthy. Do you think that impacted his absolutely horrid defensive showing? Because there was rumblings that, are Luka and Kyrie that big of a defensive liability as people think they are? But in the finals, I think you could argue is the worst defensive showing out of a superstar in at least the last 10 years of me watching the NBA, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to really poke a lot of holes at his defense, but I mean, if you looked at the way he was taped up pre-game, he looked like a mummy walking out there half the games, and I mean, to suggest that, you know, if you're banged up, played a full season, and you're out there already putting up 28, 9, and 5, which is what he was doing, you got to assume that you're probably not also going to have a ton of effort for defense as well if you're banged up. So, like,
Yeah,
I didn't really put like that on him per se. I was like, Luka's gonna get torched a little bit this series. How is everyone else going to respond to that? Because he's gonna put up big numbers, and he did, but not as efficient as he should have.
But also, like, I feel whenever he came out in those games looking like a mummy, like you said, I think that was just a target on his back, man. Like, you don't show your enemy that you're hurt. Like, you just don't do that. So what did the Celtics do? Let's take it to his chest. His ribs are tied or strapped up. Like, that's essentially what happened. I think you try to hide it as much as you can, but you know.
And I think it's hard to hide as a guard. If you're a poor defender, it's very hard to hide that against a team like Boston.
Yeah.
Who has 4 guys that can initiate offense, create offense, get downhill and go to the basket. And with how quickly they move and you're having to recover and run out to guys, it's very difficult to stay in front of somebody if you're an inferior athlete, which he is to all 4 of those perimeter players.
You're also getting left on an island going one-on-one with Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. Like, you're not going to win those battles. Like, you're just not.
No. Take it from a guy who was never the quicker player. If you're having to guard a shooter and guard somebody that can go by you and you're a mediocre athlete, like you're not happy having to do that at all.
Right. You're going to have to rely on good team defense at that point and rely on the big man behind you to do solid rim protecting. And if that is a 20-year-old rookie, they're definitely not ready for that assignment.
And even more so, if that's a 20-year-old rookie that's having to get pulled away from the basket to guard two centers that can shoot threes, and Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis, that was a big thing that it certainly would have been something we would have spoken about earlier after game 1, game 2 is they had to step out, and you remember I think it was after game 1, Porzingis was getting so many shots around the free throw line over shorter players. It's because they were trying to do anything they could to keep their bigs around the basket. So he was just getting insane matchups. And I think that just goes to how deep Boston is and how versatile they are as a team offensively. There's one other big talking point that I'm interested to get y'all's thoughts on. Look at Kyrie Irving as a player. He goes to Boston, wants out. Goes to Brooklyn, it doesn't work out with their big three. He originally asked out of Cleveland, and a lot of players, media darlings, grew very tired of his act, whether it be him not playing because of COVID or breaking COVID regulations intentionally to go to a birthday party and getting suspended. There's countless things that he did. Do y'all think Kyrie rejuvenated his image as a teammate, as a player, and is now viewed in a higher light from, I'll say, mostly media and even NBA GMs? Do you think he's kind of come back from his woes over the last few seasons?
Well, I think, I don't think his image could have gone down anymore.
That's fair.
Because there was talks about him not being a good teammate. So on the court stuff was, in the talks, and then multiple things off the court were issues. So people were just not a fan of him. So the fact that anything is positive is happening in the locker room is good. The fact that he's making headlines for good reasons, for making the finals, for getting along with Luka like when no one thought he would. There's a lot of reasons why people are starting to clap their hands and be like, oh, Kyrie could be a benefit to a team now and not just somebody we're just really looking at as one of the best or one of the most skilled basketball players of all time. And one of the things that I noticed was that he shook the hand of every single Mavericks player and didn't leave the court until he did that, and wanted to dap everyone up and say, hey, good game, because he realizes, when those guys leave that court, they're really hanging their heads. They're really feeling really low about themselves. He's been there before. He knows what that feels like. And at that moment, I was like, you know what? Maybe he actually does want to be in Dallas. Maybe he actually found a place that not only accepts him for who he is, but some place where he can maybe finish out his career and change the narrative around him a little bit.
Yeah, it also helps that you have someone who is always yelling at the refs and causing a scene in Luka, and you can kind of just fly under the radar and just like, at least I'm not that guy. So that's kind of, I feel that helps Kyrie a lot. Is that he is a superstar for sure, but when you think of the Mavs, you think of Luka, and you don't think of Kyrie. I mean, you do obviously, but when you first say, clear your head. First thing you think of when I say Mavericks, you go Luka, like bottom line. So, and also he can do what he wants in Dallas. It's not as crazy liberal as his other cities that he was in. So he's able to kind of just be himself. And, if you want to talk about how flat the earth is, I get it. The Metroplex is pretty flat. So you have a good argument, man.
Well, I think you saw him getting to have a little bit of fun again. And that's something that was talked about with Kyrie is that, you could tell he had more fun. He felt more comfortable in his own skin. And he's even talked about how, whenever he was in Boston towards the end of his tenure in Cleveland, he wasn't the same level of happy in his personal life. He wasn't as mature as he is now. And maybe that's all we're seeing. Maybe we're seeing a more mature Kyrie, a happier Kyrie, a more content Kyrie. And not only did he take time to congratulate and, encourage all of his Mavericks teammates. But as he got taken out of the game with a couple minutes left, he took the time to, go shake hands with a lot of Celtics players. And I don't know if it was like overkill, like he was doing it too much, but not a lot of guys are willing to do that. And maybe that just goes to show how appreciative he is to be back where he is. I mean, you look at what he was traded for. I think he was traded for a late first-round pick in Spencer Dinwiddie. Like Kyrie Irving traded for Spencer Dinwiddie in a late first. That's really wild. And they traded for him with only 1 year left on his contract. He's an unrestricted free agent. And the Mavericks paid him, and I don't think there were that many other teams vying or willing to pay him as much money as they did. So it was like maybe hey, I appreciate you putting your faith in me. I'm going to reward you in combination with maturity and in combination with happiness, playing alongside Luka, not feeling all the pressure like he had to do it all and or be the best player on the team. And I'm happy for him because he's a guy that I was down on, that I could almost say was one of my least favorite players in the NBA. And I think he changed my mindset on him a little bit. And I view him certainly in a more positive light now.
Yeah, shout out to Adam Silver. You see whenever you change the rules on marijuana, how cool everyone else is. And Kyrie is just just the absolute like trophy guy when it comes to that. So continue to lower those things, and you're going to see more of these guys who had some rough roads come out ahead and smelling like a rose, like Kyrie Irving.
Right.
Or like a bud.
Right. I was about to say maybe smelling like another plant. I don't know. but yeah.
Him and Aaron Rodgers can go hang out for a little bit now.
But yeah, I think it's cool seeing the narrative around him kind of shift, because we've all known that he's been one of the most skilled basketball players of all time. The way he moves with the basketball, I've described it as poetry. It's literally something that is that smooth and flows like a damn river, to be brutally honest. But at the same time, whenever I look at Kyrie, all of those other things have kind of just loomed over him as well. So it's nice to see him get a chance to shed that narrative a little bit.
Yeah. But now that the season's over, off season, guys. The off season's going to be here. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. There's rumors going around that we're going to trade our picks for the number one. I don't know how true that is. I highly doubt it. But if we do, that'd be freaking awesome too. I'm so excited for this offseason.
Well, one off-season talking point that actually you brought up via text not long ago that you wanted us to discuss was the Lakers head coach candidacy. And I think back whenever you brought it up, there was a couple guys going for it now. But yeah, let's get your take on that, AJ. What do you think? What do you think about that, Rob?
I think for the Lakers, I don't think a first coaching job as in JJ Redick is a great idea. I think that's a lot to ask from someone who hasn't been in that role. That's going to have all the media attention on him. It's going to be it's like if we were on a team and I was the coach and like we had a podcast together, it's a little. I feel like the dynamic would not work out. Like it would be kind of weird. But that's my 2 cents from outside looking in. Maybe it's going to work out, but you're going to have to deal with things that you haven't had to deal with yet. And I feel like if JJ Redick wanted to go to, the Jazz or the Pacers and be their head coach or whatever, and then go to the Lakers, that would make a little more sense. Like you haven't been on the bench. I think you mentioned his name earlier. I don't know why Sam Cassell isn't like jumping up and down saying, "Interview me. I want to talk about this Laker job." Because I think he would be an amazing head coach for someone like LeBron, because he was an ex-player, he is a champion, he just won a championship with the Celtics. He's a known guy. LeBron respects him. I think that would be a pretty good fit. Maybe we'll see, but I think right now the Lakers, no one wants the job. Like no one wants the job because
it's a hot seat.
Yeah, no one's lasted more than
That's a hot seat.
3 years.
Yeah, you could win a championship for the Lakers and get fired in less than 2 years.
Fired.
Yeah.
Crazy. And like that's what they do. And
Rob, what do you think about Dan Hurley turning that job down?
I mean, I loved it. That was a guy who was comfortable in his situation. It was a winning situation, and we've seen multiple coaches try to make that leap and it not work out. So I think he did what was best for himself, his legacy, and in my opinion, he kind of dodged a bullet. But to go back to your point, AJ, I actually think JJ Redick would be perfect. I think that you need a guy that is seasoned as he is from a media perspective to be able to handle that shitstorm that would get thrown at him. You can have JJ in front of a microphone and he can articulate his way out of just about any situation, and you best believe there would be a million people trying to poke a million different holes in everything that they're trying to do. So is he intelligent? Can he talk basketball? Does he know the X's and O's? All that stuff. Of course he does. But I think on top of that, his ability to be able to handle the media storm, that's something we knew Darvin Ham wasn't going to be able to do, and I don't think we ever saw him be comfortable as the Lakers coach.
But what's going to happen if they're like in a late game situation and he's getting yelled at by the players? Like, is he going to be able to handle that? Like, are they?
Well, one thing that stands out to me is that there's only really one player that would set the tone / question him, and that's LeBron. And they obviously have a close relationship. And you've seen on their podcast together, I've never fully watched all the way through. I've seen clips. JJ Redick isn't afraid to tell LeBron how he feels, and he speaks pretty blatantly to him. And I think that LeBron needs some tough love because he's almost like that mythical figure that you're afraid to upset, and I think he needs to be upset. I think someone needs to get on Anthony Davis's ass, because you watch how the Lakers played in this playoffs against Denver, and the kind of effort that Davis and LeBron would give on a possession basis defensively was embarrassing to me, and it didn't look like they were locked in. And I'm wondering, is Darvin Ham saying that? If he does, is he afraid to say it? Is he afraid to question Anthony Davis? Is he afraid to question LeBron? And I don't think JJ would be. And you haven't seen in history many guys make it directly to a head coaching position without having assistant experience. Two guys that pop off the screen to me: Steve Nash, who I think at the time was working in the front office. Jason Kidd's done it as well, who of course just took Dallas to the finals. But those are two very bright basketball minds, and I think JJ Redick obviously, went to Duke, sharp guy, well-spoken, like Rob said. I think that at this point, the Lakers don't have much left in them with this core, and if they are going to compete for a championship, you got to try something different to me.
Right. Why not? Yeah, why? Yeah, I don't understand from an X's and O's perspective why it wouldn't work. But I also if they wanted to go with the more seasoned guy, a guy I've been wanting to see in the NBA for a while, Jay Wright.
Interesting.
I've literally been wanting to see him coach an NBA team for years now, and Coach Pop is very high on him. Obviously, he was on his staff for the 2020 Olympics.
Yep.
And has had well over a decade of success with Villanova. I would have loved to see him step into an NBA arena, but at the same time, is that going to be this Lakers situation that's pretty, up in the air right now? Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in there.
I don't know who would. I mean, I guess it's a great resume builder, but you're asking a lot for somebody. I mean, it's just a revolving door, and when LeBron retires or leaves, you're probably going to get fired that year or the year after, if you even make it that far. So it's just your lifespan so short on that seat. So
yeah, Budenholzer would have been a name I would have been intrigued to see them go after, but Phoenix beat him to the punch. I don't know what other names are out there. There aren't that many names that are linked to him, really. Linked to the Lakers, and as cool as it would be to live in LA and make $8-10 million a year coaching as a Laker, and at least having the possibility of going down and winning a championship for the Lakers, it's a job also that you could take and it could kill your NBA career. And you could end up as an assistant coach like Darvin Ham just had to do. And I think did you join Doc Rivers as an assistant? Is that what it was?
Yeah. Back to Milwaukee.
Yeah. So it's also place that can go and stunt your growth as a coach. And you get up like Luke Walton as the third assistant on an NBA team pretty quick.
He was the head coach for a while.
Yeah, he was. And now he's like, what, the third assistant? And is it Sacramento?
Yep.
Is that where he's at?
Yeah, buried on the bench. Second row Walton.
But hey,
R.I.P.
Is that stunting your growth, or is that revealing your growth, or is that revealing your true height as a coach? Maybe he didn't deserve that chance to begin with.
Maybe not. So,
but yeah, that's very interesting. Who's going to be the Lakers head coach? We have no idea, but we're pretty sure that we're going to hear about it endlessly because the media cycle talks about the Lakers endlessly.
Well, they have about a week to go because the draft comes out, and I would imagine they want a head coach before their draft, so he knows what he has on the team, or maybe has a say in that. But we'll see. The problem with the Lakers is that they just want to buy everyone, and that's what they're used to. So they're trying to do that with their head coach, but people are telling them no.
And they haven't hit in the draft. They had an opportunity last year to get Jaime Jaquez, who could have been a big contributor, but they take Hood Schifino. I think it was like a pick or two before.
Who?
They had yeah, exactly. Hood Schifino.
Jalen.
Yeah.
So. But whenever we're looking at the Lakers, it's like, yeah, like you said, they haven't hit on anyone in the draft that has played with them. Anyone that's turned into anything over the last several years, they got rid of. And so
I guess they drafted Austin Reeves, who that was actually shockingly good. No, they didn't even draft him. He was out of Oklahoma. He didn't even get drafted, and he's been great. But really, besides him, I can't name anyone.
Kobe.
They didn't even draft him. They traded for him on draft day.
Yeah. they traded him for Charlotte.
Yeah, shout out and RIP to Jerry Rest for that one. That dude was
RIP to a legend in the logo for sure.
Yeah,
he had the basketball mind of everyone. Man, he was amazing.
Yeah, I mean he had his hand in a lot of dynasties, and I don't think that gets talked about nearly enough.
Yeah, top 20 NBA player of all time, top 5 to 10 NBA executive.
Top 20 player? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I honestly I think that's fair. Having him in that,
you can make the argument.
Yeah, absolutely.
The problem with his era is that they weren't three-pointers. So he was scoring a bunch of points, but
against
they're all
firefighters.
Twos. Right. He was doing step-back twos.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you guys have seen this clip. He hits like a 3/4 of the court shot, like from the other side on the free throw. Hits the shot, it's 2 points, but he takes the game into overtime, and they win the game in overtime.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
If I mean, nowadays that's a win right out of the gate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just excited because I want the Spurs to do all the things, and they're probably not going to do anything at all. But it's fun to talk about.
Yeah,
for sure, absolutely. Well, yeah, I think, guys, I think that's a good episode. We talked about the finals. We talked about some off-season stuff coming up.
Adam apologized.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam apologized, and we made we made him feel shame. So yeah, I think this has been a good episode for sure. All right, well that's it's been a good episode of the Baseline Bums podcast. It's your host Rob, aka B-Ball Archives, and once again AJ, Adam. We've been dishing out basketball knowledge. Thank you for joining me.
And as always,
it is go
Spurs.
Go.
Lag.